We happen to be honored this morning to have with us Heidi Beininger, a mom, an educator, a proud Hoosier Democrat that's excited to be running in the great state of Indiana for the House to represent the fifth seat or the Indiana's fifth congressional area. So welcome to the show this morning, Heidi.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me today.
Good. Are you a little nervous?
I might be. It's also 8 o'clock. I was also out canvassing all day yesterday. So, I've already got my canvassing T-shirt on because I'll be out there again today. There's a lot going on.
Well, we are excited to have you with us, and I'm going to give a shout out to our partner in crime, Kurt Mullett with Hoosier Blue 63, who has helped us make sure we had a chance to chat with you this morning. Heidi, tell our listeners all over a little bit about you, your background, and a little bit about the race that you're currently in.
Yeah, so I am running for the Indiana State House for District 5, which includes the towns of Granger, Mishawaka, and Osceola. We share a border with South Bend, where the University of Notre Dame sits, which I'm a professor at the University of Notre Dame. So I think your listeners would be interested in understanding how it is that I came into this, because I didn't know that I was going to be a candidate. I didn't intend on becoming a future politician, but it was 2 years ago when Roe was overturned, and our state legislature literally ran back, called a special session, and for 2 weeks, in August 2 years ago, they met to discuss an extreme abortion ban. And they passed one, as you know. They were one of the first to do so in the country. And the guy that I'm running against actually voted for an amendment that would have eliminated the exceptions for rape and incest. So he wanted something that was actually far more extreme than what he actually ended up getting. So the Republicans were so excited about doing this that when they gave it to the governor to sign, Eric Holcomb, he signed that bill behind closed doors at 3 a.m. with no media. So it tells you something. Yeah, exactly. It gives you a huge pause because normally when you're excited about doing a bill, you've got your fancy pen, you've got the media standing in front of you. But no, these guys behind closed doors at 3 a.m. early Saturday morning, and then they signed this bill. So the next morning, I come downstairs. It's now Saturday morning, and I haven't had my coffee yet, and I see my two girls sitting on the sofa in the living room. And my youngest has tears in her eyes, and I'm thinking to myself, what is going through her mind now? And she looks up at me and she says, "Mom, why should I even go back to school this fall?" She goes to IU Bloomington. "Why should I even go back to school?" She's like, "The people in Indiana hate women. They don't value us. They don't trust us." And she's in tears. I mean, you can see this total look of despair. She loved going to school. For her to suggest that she shouldn't go to school was just devastating to me. And I'm standing there, and I've got 1,000 things swirling around in my head, all of which are saying, "Oh, my gosh, I haven't even had coffee yet." And I look at my other daughter, my older daughter, and she looks at me, and she doesn't miss a beat. And she looks me straight in the eyes, and she's like, "Mom, it's your time." I was like, dang it.
That probably shook you, Heidi.
It gives me chills even when I'm telling you the story now, and that was 2 years ago. It still gives me chills because she was on it. She knew it. And she's like, "Mom, nobody is going to run against this 12-year incumbent, and he's just going to sail back in there, and he's never going to be held accountable for what he has done to women in Indiana." Well, listen, my two girls being worried about their future, I mean, I was scared to say yes. I'm not scared anymore, by the way, but I was scared then to say yes, but I could not be more fearful, right? My fear could not be more important than my daughter's fear of their future. That's when the mama bear comes into play, right?
Yep.
My girls were fearful for their future, and I'm like, I set aside my fear and trepidation and said, we've got to run. And so I set up a campaign in 2022. We actually filed the day before the final day that you could actually file. And so we had about 4 months to get things off the ground, which we mounted a terrific campaign. We didn't get it over the finish line, but now I've had a year to run, and that campaign set us up for huge success. And now we are off to the races. We're in a dead heat with our guy. We're in a dead heat. So we are working every single day. And listen, my district is considered R+8. So it means that Republicans have an advantage by 8 points, and we have closed the gap. And nobody thought we could do it.
Yeah.
Nobody thought we could do it. We've knocked on nearly 15,000 doors. We've made almost 6,000 phone calls, and we have sent out 8,000 handwritten postcards. And we got 2 weeks. We're not done yet.
Heidi,
so that's how this whole thing got started.
And I'm going to let you talk. I'm not going to talk over you but I'm so take this in the right way. I am so proud of you. I'm also so excited for you. When I say proud of you, I mean that in the sense that you have pride for a fellow person that's out there doing their thing. And for you, I mean, I know that you were shook as a mom. When you said that your second daughter, your other daughter, turned to you and said, "Mom, it's your time." That impacted me because it is our time. It has always been our time, but particularly when we have issues like these votes and these bills being signed behind closed doors, which, like you said, it tells us that they know they're wrong. They know they're wrong. They know they're hiding from what they should be proudly talking about, but they can't be proud of this bill. They just know that, to your point, that these guys like Dale, your opponent, is it Dale Devon? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Right.
They're bought and paid for.
Sure.
And that's not to say that there aren't Democratic candidates all over the country that are running for different offices that don't have funding from, wealthy sources and so forth. But the data backs up that our funding tends to be grassroots. It tends to be a replica of what Vice President Harris has done since she became the nominee and raised a boatload of money to support the effort that's good for everybody. So kudos to you for your leadership inside of your family, for your daughters to both turn to you and passionately say, "Mom, this is what's got to happen." I'm just really proud of what you've been able to do in a short period of time. I mean, Heidi, come on.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? A short period of time. The whole thing started back in November. A good friend of mine, a really close friend of mine, and he's 20 years younger than I am, but so full of wisdom and energy, and he wanted me to run again. And it was in the middle of the summer, last summer, and he said, "You've got to make a decision. You're the person. You need to run." And I was like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yes." And so we made that decision last November 1st. So it's been almost a year now, but we're 2 weeks short of that.
Yep.
And I quietly announced that I was running. And then I started having all of these one-on-one meetings with people, all kinds of people. What's important to you? What do you think this campaign should look like? What should we be focused on? Could you help? Would you be interested in a leadership role? I want to invite people into this campaign. And by January 1, I formally announced, and I had a leadership team almost in place because I'd had over 100 one-on-one conversations with people. Every moment that I could to sit down, and let me tell you, I've been at every coffee shop you can imagine in Granger, Mishawaka, and Osceola. And it was the reason I joke about it, but it's really true, to just sit down and have coffee is a relaxing atmosphere, to relax folks, to say, this is what I'm thinking, but I want to hear what you're thinking about what needs to be different here in Indiana in our district, and then to find out if they're interested in a leadership role. And I have 16 people who are in leadership roles on my team, and only one is getting paid part-time because that's what we can afford. The rest of them are donating their time. And I've got people who are working on this every single day. I mean, I work on it all day, 7 days a week, from morning to night.
Coffee or not.
in between my job, right? Because I am a professor at the University of Notre Dame. I also do research in public health and policy focused on lead poisoning prevention. And so I've got that job and my responsibility to my students. But when I'm not doing that, every moment is about being on the phones and fundraising, talking to voters, and then being out there and knocking on doors and attending events. So it's an absolute, it has been an entirely 1 year of my life that I have given to this. And then when you contrast it with my opponent, Neil Devon, who sits at home. He has a job. I mean, he and his family have their home building business, and but he's not out there campaigning. He doesn't knock on doors. He doesn't make phone calls. He doesn't have to do the fundraisers. When you look at his campaign finance report, the Republican Party gives him money and just puts money into his account. His campaign finance report was 25 pages long. Mine was 125 pages long. Because I've got individual donors. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just do that visual, right?
Four times the amount of contribution based on the reporting. 4 times the amount of contribution. That's not astonishing. It's something that, again, to be proud of, and it's representing the people of the community.
That's exactly right. And those are all public records. People can go on there and they'll see who their friends are who've donated to me. And you're not going to see lists and lists and lists of PACs like you do on his, right? That half of his report are PACs. I mean, he might have had 20 individuals who donated. I have over 600 individual people who donated to me.
That's amazing.
600.
So let me ask you this question. Circling back to something you said earlier that was sort of part of the impetus for you getting in this campaign, getting in this race, and being part of the mix was Roe and Dobbs. What are the other issues when you've talked to folks, as you said? What are some of the other issues that are important to the folks, not just in the state, but specifically in the district that you're running in?
Right. So I would say that their top 3 issues, and they almost get brought up evenly when I'm out at the doors and on the phones, and that is we've got women's rights, restoring women's rights. Number 2 is the economy. So people want to talk about the fact that property taxes are high in Indiana and that they're uneven and unfair. And how do we get corporations to pay their fair share? They also talk about the gas tax. Little old Indiana of 7 million people, we have the 5th highest gas tax in the country. 56 cents of every gallon of gas goes to the state. And we're saying, well, why is that? Why would Indiana have to pay the 5th highest gas tax, right? My opponent always boasts about how the cost of living in Indiana is just so awesome. Really, Dale? That's not what the voters are saying, that's for sure. And then the third thing, and it's huge in Indiana, public education. They have victimized and villainized teachers. They have made up stories about teachers. They come after teachers individually. We have one of the lowest teacher pays. We are in the bottom quarter in the country for teacher pay. It's terrible. We're experimenting actually with public education in Indiana, and I just learned this morning. So Indiana was one of the first to go to the voucher system, where you could take your tax dollars and you could take that to another school, because the theory was, when Governor Mitch Daniels was here, the theory was that if you were a low resource family and you were at a failing school, you then had the option to take your money, public school, mind you, a failing public school. You could take your tax dollars and go to a different public school or perhaps a private school that was near you. So now what has happened is that they have completely bastardized that program, and now a family making $230,000 can apply for those dollars. Do you know what's happened now in Indiana? We have taken public health dollars and we are shifting them to wealthy families to pay for their private education that they were already paying for, that their children had never attended a public school.
Meanwhile, the public schools,
bastardized.
the kids, the public schools are suffering because the money that should go to families with less resources don't have the dollars flowing into their schools. So those schools inevitably lose teachers, they lose students, they close. Am I on the right track?
Oh, yeah. No, you're definitely on the right track. So the PHM school district that's in my neighborhood where my kids ended went to school and graduated from, and it was a fantastic experience, by the way. But during the last 15 years that the Republicans have had the trifecta, they've lost $14 million over those years.
Yeah.
Mishawaka schools have lost $7 million over the same amount of time. So my district has lost over $21 million for this scheme. And you know what? Those $21 million go to families that would have been paying for private education anyway. We're just moving public dollars into the pockets of very wealthy individuals and paying for their private education.
So how is that bit of information? And I apologize for interrupting, Heidi. I got to ask this question before I forget it. Yeah. How is that being communicated to voters in the state of Indiana? I mean, that's a big deal. How is it being communicated, though? Yeah.
So, and you're talking about the shifting of public dollars to private schools and so forth?
Yes.
Well, here's the thing in Indiana. Our media is now owned by big conglomerates. So our people in Indiana we don't get information. We don't get information until people like myself or Kurt, other folks are educating Hoosiers. They don't know. They simply don't know. And here's the awful thing about this. So we pay this gas tax, right? Mm-hmm. We take money away from public education. We actually pay more in the emergency room. We do less reimbursement on Medicaid. I mean, we're doing all kinds of really horrible things to Hoosiers. They don't know it. And what's worse is it's become normalized. They're told that this is how America is. Working 2 jobs is normal. And I'm saying that's not normal. How is it that I grew up middle class and my dad was a used car sales manager for 36 years, and he had a wife and 4 daughters, and he raised all of us, and there were cars in the garage to get us back and forth, to high school. There was food in the refrigerator, and we could take a vacation every year, right? Yep. And we had a great life.
Yeah.
That's not so easy anymore. You talk to any teacher in public education now, everybody is thinking about how they do a side hustle. Everybody. How do I make extra money? People are talking about that they do Airbnbs, or they pick up a side job, or they, sell. I know somebody who's doing bouquets of flowers, that they grow flowers in the backyard and then they sell flowers. And I mean, people are trying for all kinds of side hustles, and this is utter nonsense.
And this is, and
the Republicans are really.
So to your point on that, you're in a quote unquote politically red state run by Republicans, and so this is where there's a big pushback. We're in a blue state. We're your neighbor. We're your cousin next door. You're familiar with Chicago because from what I remember, you got your master's degree from UIC. So Chicago, Chicagoland area, but we're your neighboring blue state. And we get criticized for, it's one of those Democratic-run states and all these problems. But you're in a neighboring red state that's got problems that are bigger than ours in many ways, but it's run by Republicans. And so that's why I asked the question about how is that message getting out? And your media there in Indiana is it's very tilted, because I watch a lot of what's on in WSPT and some of the stations, and it's very, very, very tilted. So now I get it. I have a better understanding.
Yeah, it's very, very tilted. And just to remind your audience, Indiana has been under a Republican trifecta. They've got the governor's office, the House, Senate, and the House for 16 years. So, and the funny thing is that if you ask people, like, what's wrong in Indiana, they'll say it, and then they'll be like, and it's the Democrats' fault. And it's because the media has convinced them of this. And it's like, dudes, the reality is that it's the Republicans. They have been in charge for 16 years. They don't have to have a Democrat in the room to do business. They don't have to consult a Democrat to make a decision or pass a law. They just get to do whatever they want. And let me tell you, the guy that I'm running against, the kinds of laws that he proposes, he will talk to a parent and he'll be like, that's just terrible. And he will author a bill to help one individual parent. I'm not making this up. One individual parent. And he tried to help a parent this parent had already been in court, and the judge had already said that her child needed to be removed because of neglect. The mother, there was an eating disorder, and she was withholding food, blah, blah, blah. It was awful. And Dale Devon said that judge cannot be allowed to take that child away. That mother, you are messing with her parental rights. And he wrote a bill. And he brought it to his Republican leadership, and the leadership said, no, Dale, that's too much. That's the kind of guy that I'm running against.
Well,
that's the kind of guy I'm running against.
And unfortunately, we have a political landscape right now that without folks like you leaning in to do the work, to push back, and to bring the energy and enthusiasm and excitement that you clearly have to the table, nothing's going to change. So it takes that kind of effort. And that's one of the reasons, Heidi, with my show, I've really made it one of my goals and responsibilities is to make sure that we're talking not just about the presidency, the U.S. Senate and House of Representatives, but the state legislatures. And that the more we lean into the local elections, the more we're going to be able to, from the ground up, rebuild not just individual states and districts like you're running for, but the country in general. And that's where and what our responsibilities are. You've been super busy. You've got a lot of things going on. Tell us a little bit about some of the events as we wrap up that you've got coming up these next 2 weeks. What's happening in your world right now?
Yeah, so I would tell you that in the next 2 weeks, the focus is phones and canvassing. It is because I knew this from my last election, that this election would be won by the one-on-one conversations we have with voters. It is the most critical thing for me and my volunteers to get in front of voters and have a conversation. That's where this thing is going to be won. So these last 2 weeks, I actually have no more events because it's all about being on the phones and all about being out in the field and canvassing and knocking on doors. But just this past Sunday, Jennifer McCormick, who's a Democratic candidate for governor, came to town, and she and I got to spend the day together. And so that was my last event. And we visited Unity Garden that grows vegetables and fruit and gives it away for free.
Wow.
It was amazing. And I knew that it was there. I had never visited. Amazing. And then the other business that we went to was a minority-owned, female-owned independent bookstore. And on the front of the bookstore, it says, "We sell banned books."
Wow.
Just loved being at her shop, and I knew the owner already for many, many years, so it was really fun to visit her, and she's in the spotlight, and have the governor see that. And then we had a huge event at the Century Center, which is a big event spot down in downtown South Bend,
right.
And we had hundreds of people attend. And the energy was palpable, and people were coming up to me and were like, "You've got this. We see you out there. Your ads are out there. We've gotten phone calls. We've gotten the mailers, and people are talking about you." And the big ask that Jennifer made, and we keep repeating, is that it's not enough to just go out and vote. Now you got to get your Rolodex. She goes, AKA your cell phone. And she's like, you need to call every single person in that cell phone and say, have you made a plan to vote? Yep. When are you voting? That's the responsibility that every U.S. citizen has now. It's our privilege to be voting.
How are you going to get there?
Need to do that.
What's the day look like? How are you going to get there? If you still have time to take the day off from work, if you're working, I've been saying that for months. It's what are you registered? Where do you vote? How are you going to get there? What's your day going to look like? Who are you taking with you? Take that extra bottle of water, have some comfortable shoes, have the umbrella, be prepared because you don't know. But if you're prepared for it, you can deal with what would happen on that particular day. So, Heidi, how can folks find you? And how can folks in this last 2 weeks get involved?
Yeah. So HeidiForIndiana.com, that's my website. And then Heidi, for Indiana on all of my socials. Honestly, if you just put in Heidi for Indiana in Google, you will find me on social at my website. And get in contact with me. We have phone banking going on, and we need to make thousands of more calls, and we would welcome people to do that. And if you're in a neighboring state, come on over and canvass with us. We would love to have you, and it's so easy to get in contact with me. My cell phone is just about everywhere now. I put it on all of my walking pieces because I want to be that candidate, and eventually I want to be that representative that people can get a hold of, not hiding, because my opponent, he hides from people. He is hiding. You can't get a hold of him. I can't get a hold of him. The media has asked me how to get a hold of him. And I'm like, I don't know how to get a hold of him.
Why are you asking me? You guys do the research. That's too funny.
That's exactly right. But, the truth is, though, and it is very serious why he is hiding. It's because he is so extreme. And he's so unpopular. He doesn't want to get in front of people, and he doesn't have any leg to stand on when he tries to explain who he is. And if that's what you have to do, then that means that we can't even trust you. We can't trust Dale. We can't trust him with our taxpayer dollars. We can't trust him with our kids, our education, and let alone our vote. And so this is why people just need to know. They need to know. The contrast could not be more clear between him and I. This is the work I've been doing for 35 years. I've been in public education and public health and policy for 35 years. Dale has been a home builder, and he's helped himself to bill after bill after bill to help promote his home building business, and meanwhile, leaving families, education, and children behind. And I'm here to bring that balance back. That's my objective.
Well, Heidi, we are here to help you in whatever ways we can in these last 2 weeks. I will be talking about you again. And listen, folks, I want you to go to Heidi for Indiana. Google her name, if nothing else. And the last name is spelled B as in boy, I-E, D as in David, I-N-G-E-R. Heidi Beininger running for that seat, the 5th seat in congressional district in Indiana. We got to get her across the finish line, guys. It matters all across the country to have more folks on a state level winning these races. And it's been great, Heidi, to have you with us. We might try to get you on one more time before Election Day for one last push. And I really an honor to have you with us this morning. Thanks for joining the show.
Oh, thank you. This was so much fun. And thanks to everybody who was listening. This was just terrific. Thank you.